a horticulture educator for U of I Extension. I serve Livingston, McLean, and Woodford counties. We are lucky in our unit to have 2 hort educators, so I get to primarily focus on youth horticulture education. I work with school gardens, camps, after-school clubs, 4-H programs, and junior master gardener support. I want to start today by thanking you for joining in this webinar and being interested in sharing these garden activities with youth. I love getting to teach youth because they are so much fun. They're so inquisitive. They're just little sponges, and plus they are our future. You know, if we don't introduce them to gardening and appreciating nature, they may never be. So today I hope to be able to provide you some ideas to use in your programs and your classrooms. So what is a back pocket lesson? These are quick or easy, highly engaging activities that require minimal preparation. They are techniques or activities that you can literally pull out and use with little to no advanced preparation. So it's available for you to use as an object in your back pocket might be. These are great for if your main lesson ends a few minutes early and you're looking to fill some time, or if you don't have much time to prep for a lesson, you can pull these to use. I also use a lot of these for activity stations where you have kids' attention for a few minutes and then they move on to another activity like a fair, farmer's market, or any community event. So before I get into some of the activities, I just want to provide you a few basic tips on conducting these impactful horticulture activities. So first, keep it fun. And although it may not be our ultimate goal of every lesson, having fun is a key element in any impactful learning activity. So to keep the youth motivated and engaged, we want to make sure they're fun and maybe an element of surprise. 2, we want to use a theme. So a theme can help excite or inspire or maybe motivate kids while keeping them focused on our goal of our lesson. This would be a maybe pollinators or trees or birds, any specific theme that you want to use for your lesson. Number 3, have a variety of materials handy. So have those art supplies, those reference books, those magazines and games ready for you to pull. We have one at our office where we have a supply room. We go in, pull as needed, and it's very handy, saves a lot of time. Number 4, tailor activities to the age group. So because youth at different ages have different needs and interests and even abilities, we want to be sure to tailor them so the youth have the chance to learn and to practice and succeed in learning all these new gardening skills. 5, we want to give examples. So when asking the youth to do an activity or try a new skill, we want to show an example first. So if you're planting seeds, demonstrate all the steps so that those visual learners can see what you mean and can feel comfortable doing the activity as well. 6, we want to vary the type of activities. So activities can be designed for youth to work individually, maybe in pairs, in small groups, or even as a large group, as a team. So although group collaborations are probably more fun for our youth, some activities are going to be designed for those individual skills. And just when designing your program, just keep that in mind of what type of activity you want to design. And then our last one is use technology when appropriate. So yes, even when gardening, activities can be enhanced by the use of technology. If it's using internet skills or for research skills or building that knowledge of subject matter. I love showing really great YouTube videos with the kids. It draws their attention. It's something they can, they're used to doing, and they're a lot of fun. So just be careful if you do YouTube videos, though, that the material is easily understood by the kids, it's engaging and accurate. We don't want to be telling them false information. So like I said before, I hope to give you some back pocket lesson ideas today for your personal programs. And you can adjust these for your group or program depending on if it's an activity station, after school, or school enrichment program, whatever it may be. Everything I we'll cover is pre-K through upper elementary that you can adjust the lesson to. And while our back pocket lessons do require minimal preparation, there, of course, may be some initial gathering of that supplies, making copies, assembling materials. But once it's all prepped, once it's in a kit, it will be ready to go for your future programs. So one of the easiest topics I find to teach kids about is seeds. Seeds are so fascinating. They're the basis for all things horticulture. Without seeds, we wouldn't have most plants. So exploring and experimenting with seeds can be a lot of fun. And there are a lot of great resources, a lot of great books that go along with seeds as well. So seed collections are a great way to show that diversity and the beauty of seeds. Seed collections can be as simple or as complex as you want to make it. You can purchase them online, but it's really, really easy and cheap to make on your own. I've been working on mine for a couple of years now, and each time I find a new seed or plant a new seed, I add it to my collection. My collection is very simple. I use small jewelry bags, and I print the names on the paper, cut it to fit the bag, add a few seeds in, and there it is. You can see the top picture. That's my seed collection in those jewelry bags. You can also find nice little cubes or trays to display them in. Whatever works for you. It just has a nice visual when they're all together. So I use my seed collection with all ages and for a variety of different uses. Last year I had an activity station at a community event, and I attached them to a trifold display, and all the bags were hung up there for people to see, and they were just awed by the diversity of the colors and the shapes. People didn't realize that seeds varied so much. So it's also great for groups to categorize the seeds. So you can the kids can categorize the seeds by size. So my top picture has smallest to largest seeds in my collection. Or you can categorize by colors, by seeds we eat. This is a fun one for the kids. They can go through and pick out seeds we eat. So the popcorn, the sunflower seeds, the bean seeds. Depending on what you have in your collection, you can do flowers in the garden, fruits, veggies, grains. These activities are really to get kids to just explore and investigate the seeds, compare, contrast, look at them all together, because I'm sure a lot of them have never collectively looked at seeds as in a seed collection before. So seed collections can lead to great discussion on seed dispersal, like what characteristics would a seed have that attaches to a human or an animal for seed dispersal. So the hooks on a sea holly would be a great visual to show them. Or what characteristics of a seed that blows in the wind, and to be able to show them the wings of the maple seed. So all of these examples would be just a nice visual to show the kids in the collection. And then another discussion to have about seeds is, why are they so important? You know, of course they help feed us and help feed animals. They grow trees for our shade, for our oxygen. They're necessary for reproduction of plants. Really, the list of why we need seeds could get very long. But again, having this visual for the kids to connect the seed with the plants that we're seeing, or the veggies we're eating, the flowers we're growing, is really going to build their appreciation for nature and make those connections with gardening. And like I said before, there are a lot of great books out there on seeds. I listed 3 of my favorite. They range from cover seed parts, seed germination, and even seed dispersal. There are so many out there, just explore, but these are some of my favorites. So a cool activity to tie all these seed topics together would be seed balls. And you know, most kids have planted seeds before, but seed balls put a fun little spin on planting them. This is a great activity for working those fine motor skills too. It's like playing with Play-Doh, and who doesn't love that, right? So there are many different recipes available for seed balls. I've tried a few out. The one I've been successful with is very simple. It's air dry clay, potting soil, and seeds. So something that you can readily have available. It is a very simple activity, very easy and relatively clean, or I guess less messy than some. For this activity, you scoop 1 tablespoon of clay, roll it into a ball, and then you flatten the clay on a flat surface or between your hands. The kids like to say, flatten like a pancake. And then you sprinkle 1 tablespoon of potting soil in the middle, and you fold that clay around the soil and mix it into the clay. And the kids always say it looks like cookies and cream ice cream. And then you flatten that clay out again, sprinkle some seeds in, fold that clay, mix it again so they're evenly dispersed. You roll it into a ball. You put it in a bag. I had the direction sheet, and then you can either let it air dry and get really hard for a few days, or go ahead and place it outside on bare ground. And then the water, either from rain or hand watering, will melt the clay, and then once the environment's favorable, the seed will germinate. So depending on when the activity is done, they can be planted right away or planted late fall so the seeds can overwinter outside, or they can be planted outside in the spring when it's warm enough to start germinating the seeds. So like I said, I always have these materials on hand to use. A great little activity to use at activity stations, a quick lesson, even a wrap up for a seed lesson for review. You can use many different kinds of seeds, so it opens up the possibility for a lot of different talking points or discussions. And I like to use a seed mix so that I can talk about a variety of different plants. So you can talk about annual and perennial, which seeds the plants are going to overwinter, and which ones are just going to last one growing season. I really like to use a pollinator seed mix, and when we add the seeds, we talk about pollinator plants, who visits the flowers, why they choose those flowers, what makes a great pollinator plant. And then through all the steps, you can review what seeds need to germinate. So they need that good location, that soil, they need water, and they need the desirable temperature. So they're going to stay in this compact, hard seed ball until they get all of those 3 things available. So another little fun activity that I use when we're talking about seeds and plant life cycles to get kids up and moving and active during a lesson is this plant life cycle acted out. And it can be altered for whatever kind of plant or life cycle you're going to talk about. I provided you examples of the tomato, the sunflower, and the evergreen tree life cycles, but adapt as you want and be creative. For the acted out tomato, we'll go through. If you guys want to at home stand up and act this out, we'll act like we're here in our youth lesson. So begin by asking the students to curl up into a tight ball. You're a seed. Pretend to be a rain cloud and rain on the little seeds underneath the soil. Tell the students to uncurl and kneel. You've sprouted. Slowly uncurl your feet, staying low to the ground. You've grown roots. Stick your arms up like a little sprout. You've sprouted. Open your hands, palms up, and wiggle your fingers. You've grown baby leaves. Wiggle your toes. You've grown lots of little roots. Grow a little taller and spread your arms out and hands out wider. You've grown bigger leaves. Your leaves are soaking up the sun and making food for the plant through photosynthesis. Stand up, feet together. Your stem has grown taller. Slurp, slurp. Your roots are drinking up the water from the ground. Spread your fingers wide and surround your face. Your flowers are blooming. Now pretend to be a bee or butterfly and fly around the room pollinating the other little flowers. Students, interlock your fingers and make a circle over your head. You've produced a juicy, ripe tomato. For some reason, in this garden, this little tomato was forgotten. You sway back and forth, and suddenly, splat, the tomato falls off the stem and breaks on the ground. little bugs and insects help the tomato break down, and suddenly you are left with a tiny seed. So the kids really enjoy this activity. Every time I've done it, it gets them up and moving, and it also reinforces that plant life cycle. That it gives them a chance to act silly, but they're also learning. All right, our next theme that we'll talk about is trees. So, kids may have jumped in pile of leaves before or sat under the shade that the leaves provide. But how many have actually explored them up close and learned why they are so important? So just like a seed collection, a leaf collection is really easy and fun to create. I've seen some of these online too, and they're kind of pricey. We started one last year at our office, and it's really simple. We collected the leaves and then made a homemade plant press by just layering newspaper and books. And then once the leaves are dry, we laminate them here at our office. And then on the back of the leaves, I identify them and then type out the descriptions. So for example, this swamp white oak, it has swamp white oak, quercus bicolor, simple arrangement, pinnate venation, pinnately lobed shape, dentate or lobed margins. And then the collection can be used to categorize or sort, smallest to largest, similar shapes, matching leaves. It's really, the possibilities are endless of how you can use a leaf collection, but it's just a chance to grab these leaves and bring them inside that you can use all year around. So with some of the extra leaves from our gathering for the collection, we created this fun activity station, and I placed several of the identified leaves on a trifold for display, and then kids chose a leaf from a pile, and then they compared the leaves to the display to identify it. Then we talked about how each type of leaf has its own unique characteristics that make them who they are, just like us. They then decorated them with various materials, and we put a magnet on the back for them to take home and put it in our fridge. So here's an example of bringing nature indoors for the kids. It can help build that appreciation for nature, and then when they see that leaf, though, they will be reminded about what we taught them at that activity station. So every species of plants designs its foliage differently to be, perfectly suited for its environment. And kids can use the collection to explore, investigate, and observe different types of leaves, just like this seed collection. The collection is also a nice visual for older kids if you're teaching about the purpose of leaves, through photosynthesis and respiration. You can look at the leaves through a microscope or even a hand lens to see the structure or some of the characteristics, the stomata, no matter the time of year. I had an activity at an after-school club where I put the kids in pairs, and they had 3 or 4 different leaves, and they used my leaf characteristic posters to identify the arrangements, margins, veins, and any special characteristics of the leaves. And then they just flipped them over to check. So I used this activity to get the kids aware of different leaves so that when they're out in nature, they will maybe appreciate the diversity and beauty of every tree. I remember in my college woody ornamental class, our professor had us track the bloom time of each year or each tree and describe the flowers. And even though I may not remember all the correct botanical terms that he made us learn, this exercise made me a more observant horticulturist and really appreciate each tree for itself and become more aware of the characteristics. So same with this activity. It's okay if the kids don't remember all the terminology used to identify these leaves, but maybe it'll make them more aware that all trees have different leaves, and when they're out walking around, they'll look up and identify some of these trees, and just it'll build their appreciation. So everyone loves to teach on pollinators. It's just a fun topic. We all love it. And I imagine a lot of you already have really great pollinator or butterfly lessons that you've done with kids. There are a ton of pollinator and butterfly resources out there. I'm just going to show you a couple simple ones I like to supplement my other lessons with. So when I teach about pollination, I typically teach what the process is, what different pollinators are, and why pollination is so important. But a key aspect of teaching pollination that I sometimes forget is about the actual flowers and what makes them a good pollinator plant. So I created the pollinator flower match for the kids to do in pairs or small groups, and they match the pollinator to the flower they visit based on the description on the card. So a flower's size, shape, color, scent, and even how it's attached to the stem are adaptations to attract pollinators. And some flowers, like daisies, have regular shapes that attract lots and lots of different insects, and some flowers, like a certain orchid, are so special that they only attract one species of insects. So I think this is a really important concept for kids to understand when talking about pollinators and why they don't see all the pollinators on all the different flowers. So here's an example of the pollinator match cards that I've created. So a beetle's favorite color is green and white. They love fruity smells and they'll eat all parts of the flower. And what is it? It's a magnolia. So other pollinators in the match are butterfly, bee, hummingbird, and moth. So again, this is just a quick activity to tie in with other pollination lessons that I'm doing. And then I'm sure you have all seen before the bracelets that kids make at various events or camps where the bead represents different things. And with this bracelet, the beads represent the different stages of the butterfly life cycle. So the clear bead is the egg. The black and yellow beads are the caterpillar, the head and the body. And then the 3 green are the chrysalis, and then the white's the butterfly. So this would be a really excellent activity to do at a station or a takeaway from a butterfly lesson. So you teach them about your current butterfly lesson, and then they can take it home as oh yeah, this is what I learned. Kids love to make bracelets. They love to make jewelry, and this one is educational and it's decorative. It's cute. So it's a good exercise for counting and for those fine motor skills for those little ones too. Garden Web of Life. This is a perfect lesson to have at the end of a series or a camp where you've offered a variety of horticulture lessons, and this can tie everything together. It can make sense of why you're teaching them what you are. Through this lesson, the kids will understand how plants and animals interact in food chains. So the Web of Life activity aims at getting students to think more deeply about the interdependence of plants and animals within a habitat. So, for instance, plants need to be pollinated to survive, and flowering plants provide nectar for bees, who in turn distribute pollen amongst plants. So without one another, neither species would be able to survive. So the Garden Web of Life lesson, it was adapted from the School Garden Project online. The materials are very simple, the Web of Life cards and string or yarn. And you pass out the cards to each student. You would have students hold their cards so that everyone can see what they have, and they will make connections between the cards as they can. So students ask themselves, who needs me and why? For example, the soil card connects to the worm. Worms need soil to survive. So we begin with the student holding the sun card. And we're going to remind them that the sun is the original source of energy for all living things. So the sun will hold on to one end of the string, pick one other creature who needs them, and explain why. From there, the string's unrolled and passed to that person, who in turn makes a connection to another card until every card is holding a string. So with this lesson, the cards include different plants, insects, birds, soil, water, air, and sun. So it's very garden-based. An extension to this lesson would be to show cause and effect. So point out that if one organism or one part of a habitat in the circle has a problem, then everything in it's affected. So you can simulate this by having one person tug gently on the string, and anyone who feels that tug also tugs until everyone feels the effects. So what happens when there's a drought? Gently tug on the string at the water and see who feels the effect. So this the lesson I provided you with the handout goes through a lot of vocabulary words. So there may be a lot on there that are new or unfamiliar to the kids. So you could write these up on the board or review them before the lesson just to make those connections before teaching about Garden Web of Life. A couple other Garden Web of Life activities are the food chain and web paper chains and the food chain in the garden. So for the food chain and web paper chains, kids make these paper chains that represent the food chains and webs after listening to the story Secrets of the Garden, Food Chains and Food Web in Our Backyard. So it's a cute little story. Alice's family plants a vegetable garden each spring, and she reports all that she sees about how the plants are growing, what insects come to eat the plants, and what birds and animals come to eat the insects. And then for the food chains in the garden, the activity gets the kids out of the classroom, out in the garden to observe. So they're going to look for organisms that make up the garden food chains. They're going to draw those organisms on their paper and then connect them with those energy arrows to show the consumer and who gets the energy. So scavenger hunts, who doesn't love a good scavenger hunt? I love them. So these are a great way to get kids outside and experience nature and to get a closer look at things in the garden. You know, typically when the kids and honestly even us are in a garden, we just walk through or play in certain areas. But a scavenger hunt really gets them to slow down and look closer at maybe a fuzzy leaf or a fragrant pink flower. So I included in the packet a sensory scavenger hunt, and I created this a couple years ago for one of our children's gardens. But by slowing down and using one sense at a time, these kids were able to have this unique experience in the garden that they play in all the time. So it was a very neat little activity. You can create these very easily. Make them unique for your garden, your program, your age, the theme of the lesson. It doesn't have to be anything formal. It can be a typed up document or it can just be a simple activity out in the garden. One would be a simple color match. So give kids specific colors, either with a paint chip or an item, and they go through the garden to find an item or a plant or something that matches that color. I've also seen where you can take egg cartons, open them up, and write the opposite descriptors in each row, and you would search for those items. So one row would say hard. It would say H-A-R-D down the row in egg holes, and then the other row would say soft, S-O-F-T, down the holes of the row, or shiny, dull, smooth, fuzzy. And then in groups, the kids explore the garden and find items to fill each of those rows. For hard, they may find a rock or mulch. For the soft row, they may find a leaf or a berry. And then once they get their tray full, you regroup and share what they find. For older kids, a scavenger hunt can be used for plant identification. So go find the tallest plant in the garden. What is it? Or name a plant in the garden that produces fruit that you eat. So if you have never created a scavenger hunt before for your program or anything you're doing with youth, I encourage you to try one. They are a lot of fun to make, and they're a lot of fun for the kids to participate. Just have fun running through the gardens and searching for different items. So if you finish up a lesson early or you need to fill some time waiting on something else, here's a simple little garden memory game to do. So the students form a circle. Student 1 names a veggie based on any predetermined criteria. So it can be a random veggie or your favorite veggie, whatever it may be. And then student 2 names student 1's veggie, and then they come up with their own. You continue down the line. And if students forget, they can give clues such as it's red or it grows in the summer. And this would be a really good activity to do too with naming plants in their specific garden, at school or at home, or maybe plants that they've grown, just to make those connections. And then a few little time fillers that can be used as like a simple evaluation after any lesson. This brain drain. So for brain drain, they stand and face a peer who should be silent and listening. They tell them everything they learned about your lesson in 30 seconds. And then after that, they switch and they become the listener and listen to what their partner has to share about what they learned in the lesson. And then leaf storm, this is a simple evaluation that has this nice little gardening twist to it. So you give each student a Post-it note and they write one thing on it that they learned and will remember from the lesson. And then at your signal, they wad it up, toss it in the air, and then it falls to the ground like a leaf. And then they collect one leaf, and that's not their own, and then they read it aloud to the group. And then high five a friend, just simple. Everyone stands up, finds a buddy to high five, and they share a fact with that friend, and you can do however many high fives you want to do. So a simple evaluation can help you know if the kids learn something, and it will also reinforce a concept or two with the kids just as a review. So I want to highlight two unique youth education programs that my Master Gardeners do in my unit that I think any group can replicate and take ideas from. The first one are the Junior Master Gardener kits. So a few years ago, a group of McLean County Master Gardeners brainstormed the idea of creating these Junior Master Gardener learning kits. And it's very similar to the Ag in the Classroom kits that have been around for many years, but they include everything, all the resources that any Master Gardener would need to go teach. So they developed 9 user-friendly kits. And they include the inventory list, the lesson plans, supplemental information, books, posters, games, activity supplies. Anything you're going to need for that lesson is in that kit. And these kits have been used by several Junior Master Gardener projects of all ages, and they've even been adapted for adult populations. So our kits that we have are tree, pollination, bird, butterflies, seeds, bees, ladybugs, praying mantis, and plant parts. And they have greatly increased the number of lessons our Master Gardeners are doing. It's made their life so much simpler. They enjoy going out and teaching because they don't have to come up with a lesson every single time. So they love using these ready-to-go kits and teaching at programs as requested. So we put a lot of work into them, but now they're ready to go. They're ready to check out as requested, and they're a great resource for our unit to have. And then in Livingston County, the Master Gardeners were interested in providing horticulture enrichment lessons for the schools. And our 4-H program and Ag in the Classroom programs were already offering some lessons to certain grades, so our Master Gardeners chose to work with 2nd and 5th grade. And they worked on learning objectives for each lesson. They designed curriculum for each level. So this is a 30-minute canned lesson, and it's aligned to the next generation science standards. And then once the lessons were done, they trained the fellow Master Gardeners to go out and teach these lessons. So all the materials and handouts are prepped each semester based on the number of classroom requests we get. And then they only offer so many per semester, and they are at no cost to the school. They have turned out to be very, very popular enrichment lessons for the schools. So we currently offer pollination, prairie food chain, insects, and seed germination. But these are This program is a great example of doing a little prep work, of planning lessons and gathering materials to make everything easy for anyone to go and teach. So I'm really proud of our Master Gardeners in my unit for their youth horticulture education and then taking that initiative to develop these lessons, making it easy, and going out and spreading their knowledge and passion in the community. So again, I want to thank you for joining the webinar today. And as a horticulture educator and a mom of 2 little kiddos, I personally want to thank you for sharing your knowledge of horticulture with youth and having that passion. And I would love to answer any questions and have any ideas or hear any of your youth gardening experiences at this time.
Great. Thank you so much, Brittnay. I learned so much about different lessons I could do at some of the gardens I work at too. If you do have a question, feel free to unmute your microphone now and ask it or put it in the chat box. Mondo, the Coles unit is asking, what is NGSS?
So those are the national, oh my goodness,
It's
the science standards. What does NG stand for?
Next generation.
Next generation science
yeah.
standards. Yeah, so it's the standards that all the schools have to follow now. There's the science standards and then the, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the other ones. Just the school standards for that they have to follow and teach.
And so it's sort of like teaching benchmarks, and I think they do have them for other topics too.
Yes, absolutely.
Like English and things like that. So
feel free to share any of your experiences or some hot topics that you've taught on. I think we're all interested in learning about the topic and sharing ideas.
So there's another question that's asking, what source did you use for the Lifecycle Act It Out?
So I found the original one online. I honestly, off the top of my head, can't even tell you what it was. I was Googling one day just life cycle activities, and you would not believe what you find out there. So I honestly can't tell you what the original source was, but I've changed them for each plant that I've worked with. So I did a separate one for evergreen trees and tomatoes. So you can definitely make it your own, but I can't remember the first one that I saw it from.
Roxy is sharing that when they have put seeds to hand out to children, Roxy not only put directions on the name of the seed, but also added a picture of what the plant will look like in a small jewelry bag too. So that's another way to expand the idea. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes, that's a great idea. They love that visual of what's the seed going to look like? And then the directions are always helpful. So yes, great idea.
Well, great. Thank you so much again, Brittnay, for that really informative presentation. Wendy is saying that actually that life cycle, some information about it can be found at kidsgardening.org. So that seems like a good resource too.
Yes, thank you. There are so many wonderful resources online for youth gardening ideas. Just go out and explore and you'll be amazed what you find. So if you ever need ideas or suggestions or have anything to share with me, any great ideas, please do so. Here's my contact information. I would love to share ideas.
And then Roxy is also sharing that, I think this is a question here. So using the 5 senses in the garden, I noticed one was tongue. How do you keep them from tasting or touching with tongue?
Yes, good question. Because depending on the garden, you would not want them tasting. So in our children's garden, we make sure there's no poisonous plants to begin with. But then we also had an herb section. So we let them know that this was the area that you could taste if you wanted to. But we made sure they just weren't going out and eating random plants as well. But I think knowing that list of poisonous plants anytime you work with youth is really important.
Well, thanks again, Brittany. I don't see any more questions coming in. If you still have them, we're both online here to help answer them. If not, then I just want to thank you, Brittany, again for your time. Once this gets posted, once the closed captionings get done, it will be posted on YouTube, and we will email the link out to those of you that registered. And if you don't mind moving the slide up one, Brittany, there's a or maybe one more, sorry. This is the link to the Qualtrics survey. So if you have a QR reader on your phone, you can just scan with your mobile device and take a quick, brief survey, but I'll also email the link out. And that would be really helpful to us and to Brittany too.
Yes, thank you so much.